Hey guys, it's Alex from 7th Hour Films, and today I'm going to be reviewing the first series of Dragon Ball, aptly titled Dragon Ball. I'm not going to be covering Dragon Ball Z, GT, Super, the movies, and none of that. Just the first series of Dragon Ball, just to kind of make that clear. I just finished watching Dragon Ball the other day, and it's pretty interesting. So basically, for the, I'm going to say 2 people who haven't seen Dragon Ball, hang on, sorry, kind of adjusting the camera, with my mind, not with my feet, I'm just moving the tripod with my feet. I'm going to assume that most people that are watching this review have already seen Dragon Ball, but just in case, I'm going to kind of go over the basic plot. So it's focused on a kid named Goku who is very strange. He's kind of lived in isolation. The only other human he really knew is his grandfather, who passed away. And he meets up with a girl named Bulma, and from there they start going on an adventure to collect the 7 Dragon Balls, which is where the name comes from. 7 Dragon Balls are just these strange glowing balls, each with a different amount of stars. Goku has the 4-star ball. They're trying to find all the other Dragon Balls, and when you bring all 7 of them together, you can call forth the Eternal Dragon, a dragon that will grant you 1 wish. So it's very interesting. The Dragon Balls are very sought after. There are a couple villains in this who want to find the Dragon Balls, and some other characters that will eventually become allies that help to find the Dragon Balls. But that's not the only thing that happens in this show, because the Dragon Balls. Going and finding the Dragon Balls is only like a couple, I guess, seasons basically. Technically, there are 9 sagas in this show, but really there are 5 seasons in this show. Excuse me, I'm a little stuffy today. We'll kind of go over each story arc really quick. The first story arc is, when we're introduced to Goku and Bulma. We get some more characters. There's a character named Yamcha. If you haven't seen the series, I'm going to try to introduce these characters better. Bulma is kind of this, she's this young teenage girl. She's sort of the heir to a large tech corporation. And she wants to find the Dragon Balls. I don't specifically remember why. I don't specifically remember why, but it's not really a great wish. No one really has a good wish, by the way. There's never a good wish for the Dragon Balls, with one exception, which I'll get to later. So Bulma finds Goku, and because Goku is a great martial artist, and he's a good fighter despite his young age, she brings him along and starts to show him the world and find the Dragon Balls and all that sort of thing. They run into a desert bandit named Yamcha, and for those of you that have seen Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, or if you've even heard of it, you've probably heard jokes about Yamcha. And they're somewhat deserved later, not really. There's a big joke with Dragon Ball that Yamcha is a very pathetic character, and it's not often in the first series in Dragon Ball. When we start off with him, he's kind of weird. He's very shy around girls, so he's very shy around Bulma, and that's why he's trying to find the Dragon Balls. He wants to make a wish to not be afraid of talking to a girl. Stupid, but if you had a wish, maybe your wish wouldn't be very clever either, or, I can't generalize. that thought is just gone off the rails. So, back on the rails. Yamcha, he starts off kind of... he starts off like a very meh character, I think. But this is just in the first arc, and the first arc is like the first 12 episodes. It really like goes through it fast. But once he becomes like a permanent part of the team, and he just kind of naturally gets over his fear of talking to girls when he starts, becoming friends with Bulma, and they eventually start dating. He becomes a really good character. And he becomes a good fighter, too. And it's interesting. The only thing is that already, like, by the time of the second tournament, which we'll get more into the tournaments later, by the time of the second tournament, he's already kind of outclassed, which is kind of sad, but yeah. So, Yamcha is a pretty good character. Some more characters, Puar is his, like, floating cat shapeshifter friend. Kind of annoying, doesn't really serve a purpose. Oolong is a not-flying pig shapeshifter. I know this all sounds weird, but Dragon Ball is very weird. Just so you know. Oolong is okay, he doesn't really serve a purpose either, except for emotional support. And so those are basically the core characters of the first arc. And the villain of the first arc is Emperor Pilaf. This guy is a horrible villain. I hate Emperor Pilaf. He's just not that fun, honestly. And granted, he can have his moments, and later on he has his moments because he's not like killed or anything at the end of this, but he's kind of a recurring villain. But he's not really a threat, is kind of the thing. Is like, if he was a threat, maybe I would like him more, but because he's not, it's just... he's just not a very compelling villain. He's just kind of a nuisance. His wish for the Dragon Balls is to conquer the world, which, okay, is a legitimate wish, but he's just never a threat. I never found him to be a threat. But, okay, we'll kind of get into that later. So that's the first arc. Just kind of going over, that's the first 12 episodes, basically. And, it's good, introduces all the characters. Not a great villain, but it's only 12 episodes. You're not with him that long. The second arc is Goku decides to go train under Master Roshi, who we kind of got in the first arc a little bit, but he wasn't a main character yet. Now, Master Roshi is a main character. He's often referred to as the Turtle Hermit. He lives on an island by himself with a turtle that talks. Again, Dragon Ball is weird. And so, but not only does Goku want to train under Master Roshi, another character around Goku's age, Krillin, wants to, I keep saying, sorry. Krillin wants to train under Master Roshi. There's a bit of a rivalry there in the beginning, but not really. It's just kind of it's really just that Krillin just wants to be better. But quickly they start to realize that quickly the rivalry kind of dissipates and then they're just friends, so that works out. So they're training with Master Roshi. Master Roshi, the way I can describe him is, he's a very wise old fighter, and also a pervert, just straight up. So there's a lot of jokes about that. Some which are funny, some which are like, alright. It's not often that the joke isn't funny, but I don't know. Another character that's introduced during the training is the character Launch. Because the first mission, the first thing that Roshi has Goku and Krillin do is go find him a date. And they find Launch. She just seems to be this, just this nice girl. But there's a catch. Every time she sneezes, her hair changes from blue to blonde, and she is immediately very, very aggressive, very mad at everything, pulls out a gun and starts shooting people. Luckily, martial artists are bulletproof in Dragon Ball. Again, Dragon Ball is weird. That should be like a hashtag. Hashtag Dragon Ball is weird. Okay. So yeah, Launch doesn't entirely serve a purpose, I would say, but she's an interesting addition to the cast of heroes, which is, if you haven't guessed by now, it's a quite expanding list of heroes, cast of heroes. I mean, so yeah, she's very interesting. Eventually, because the show itself is about 150 episodes long, and so she's there from like really early on, like before even episode 20 she's in the show. And like at first it's always a big deal when she would change to the more aggressive Launch and start shooting people. Eventually she's just kind of that way all the time, like they've gotten used to it, which is very interesting and kind of funny. So yeah, all of this with the training and stuff leads into the first tournament in the series. To be more specific, the 21st World Martial Arts Tournament. This is where it's just a tournament, really. There's no villain in this first tournament. There would be villains in the other tournaments later in the show, but in this one, it's just a fun tournament. Really, I suppose the only real adversary in this is Jackie Chun, a character who comes in. He's kind of a wise old master. He's kind of a pervert, but he basically comes in to challenge the young martial artists, and he basically wants to beat them, not to prove that he's the best, but so that they can continue their training to become, they can keep training, keep going with martial arts. Because at such a young age, if they already are the world martial arts champions, what's the point of continuing with, training in martial arts? So that's a very interesting thing for Jackie Chun, which, yes, is a play on the name Jackie Chan. So yeah, that's kind of the first tournament in a nutshell. It's pretty good, pretty fun. You'll come to notice that actually my favorite parts of Dragon Ball are the tournaments. Geez, are we already to 14 minutes? Oh my gosh, I'm just through the first tournament. I'm sorry if this is a long video, but what are you gonna do? So, let's keep going. The next arc is the Red Ribbon Army. This takes forever. This is by far probably the longest arc. Maybe later, like the final arc is a bit longer, depending on how you view it, but this arc is very long. It's basically, it's almost split up into 3 arcs. Like, this arc is split up into 3, basically, or the official, like, list of sagas splits this up into 3. There's the Commander Blue arc, which is basically the beginning of the Red Ribbon Army challenging Goku because they want to find all the Dragon Balls. And basically, the main antagonist in this is Commander Blue of the Red Ribbon Army, and he's mostly fighting Goku. They take some detours in there. It takes a really long time to defeat this guy, but it's okay. It's just really, really long. The second arc in that would be the Mercenary Tau arc, when basically the Red Ribbon Army is like out of commanders because I keep saying basically now too. Yeah, I don't care. Pretty much before Blue is the main villain, Goku does defeat all the commanders in the Red Ribbon Army. Commander Silver, Commander who cares, I don't remember all the names. But there was a commander in Muscle Tower, which takes a while. But Blue specifically becomes the main antagonist with the commanders because he's the only one who can really fight. Like, none of the commanders really pose a threat to Goku except for Commander Blue, and he's still defeated. Then we get Mercenary Tau, who is he's just a mercenary. But he's hired by the Red Ribbon Army to take out Goku. He's like the world's deadliest assassin. And for a little bit, Mercenary Tau does beat up Goku. He does win. But this is near a place called Korin's Tower, where it's basically this tower. It's so like tall that you can't fly up to it. Like every single, like a plane will run out of fuel before it reaches the top of Korin's Tower. So the only way to go up there is to climb it. And when you get up there, there's a wise master. He's not a pervert this time, but there's a wise old master who will train you to become, or he doesn't train you, I'm sorry. I forgot this part. If you go there to the top of Korin's Tower, the wise old master will give you this like divine water that will make you stronger. The twist is that the water actually doesn't do anything. You're stronger because you keep going up and down the Tower of Korin. Because Korin, the master that's there, keeps tricking you to go back down the tower and keep climbing back up. So you're getting trained that way. And when you first get to the tower, Korin has the divine water, and you have to get it from him, and that's more training because he's a great martial artist. So you have to basically outsmart him or outmaneuver him to get the water, which is also part of the training, which is very clever. So that's what happens with Mercenary Tau. The third part of the Red Ribbon Army arc is Commander Red. He is the leader of the Red Ribbon Army. And he's kind of just another, not really a good villain. He poses no threat to Goku. He's not a fighter. The threats from the Red Ribbon Army come from Commander Blue and Mercenary Tau. Everything else after that is not really a threat to Goku. Even so much so that Bulma, Yamcha, everyone finds out that Goku's taking on the Red Ribbon Army, and they go to help him, and by the time they get there, he's already defeated the entire army and summoned the dragon to revive someone who died earlier. I'm not going to say who, but so that's kind of the Red Ribbon Army arc. I'd say it's good, but it just went a little too long, and I feel like the end villain with Commander Red was not a good villain. It should have just been Commander Blue or Mercenary Tau. Okay, we're in 19 minutes. We're about halfway through the show, I'd say, so I'm going to try to speed this up. Okay, so now we get to the second tournament, where there's a villain in this tournament, Tien Shinhan. He is this really buff, three-eyed, literally he has a third eye on his forehead, three-eyed fighter, and he is a student of the Crane Hermit, an old rival of Master Roshi. And a twist is actually, and I'm giving away spoilers, but I don't know, if, again, most of you have probably seen Dragon Ball, or if you're going to watch it, this is so far into the show that you're going to forget it anyway. So that's kind of what happens to me. Besides, I knew going into Dragon Ball a lot about Dragon Ball. I knew about Yamcha and how he's kind of pathetic. And I knew a lot of stuff from Dragon Ball Z because you just hear that sort of stuff. So a twist is that Shen, the Crane Hermit, his brother is actually Mercenary Tau. So they're trying to get revenge for Mercenary Tau because he was killed by Goku, and so that is sort of the plot of this tournament arc, the second tournament, the 22nd World Martial Arts Tournament. And that kind of gets resolved. That gets resolved when Tien realizes that Shen and Mercenary Tau are horrible people, so he pretty much betrays them. He still wants to fight Goku, he's just not going to kill him anymore. And so he's redeemed, and Tien is very much a threat. He is a threatening villain. Shen, not really. Even there's another one of them, Chaozu. He's not really a threat. I mean, he can be, but he's not that much of a threat. Tien is a big threat. He's kind of one of the first big threats, but even still, he's just being redeemed. And it's not like... And it's still a very personal threat. There's nothing like... There's no big stakes for this arc. So yeah, that's kind of the tournament, the second tournament in a nutshell. It's pretty good. Tien is redeemed. And then, immediately, I'm talking like one episode later, no filler or anything, we move on to the next arc. The next arc, which is kind of the final arc, but it's really broken up into two arcs, is the King Piccolo arc. This is basically where this demon, this giant green demon, is brought back from his imprisonment, and he wants to take over the world and destroy humanity. So it's up to Goku to stop him. And this is the first big threat to Dragon Ball. Or in Dragon Ball, I mean. This is the first big threat, not just to Goku, but to the entire world. And it's very interesting, and Piccolo is a great villain. You'll learn some things a bit later on about Piccolo. Some things that he's kind of... He literally is kind of just pure evil. Not exactly in the way like Aku was in Samurai Jack, which I covered last week. There's probably like an iCard here. Trying to figure out where things are in this. But yeah, probably right here is an iCard for Samurai Jack. He's not exactly pure evil, but he is very, there shouldn't really be anything, like, good in him. There's no humanity. It shouldn't be like with Tien, like, he's redeemable. Now, I'm not gonna spoil stuff for Dragon Ball Z, because we're not really there yet, but, when I do that review, after I watch Dragon Ball Z, which is probably gonna be, like, maybe next year or something, because it's gonna take me a while to get through that show. But we'll talk more about that later. But Piccolo, he's a very interesting threat. He's technically killed off halfway through this ending arc. But one thing that Piccolo can do is he can actually, like, throw up these giant eggs, which have fully formed minions in them. Not freaking Despicable Me minions, but underlings for him. These sort of dinosaur-looking dudes who are fully grown, fully intelligent, and fully capable of martial arts. And they're very capable fighters. And when he's killed, he actually doesn't just make another minion. He makes almost an exact copy of himself, which then spends the next 3 years training and getting stronger so that he can avenge himself, basically, and kill Goku and destroy the world. So that's kind of that arc, and this brings us to the final arc, which is the final tournament, actually. Basically, both kinds of arcs, the arcs with where it's just a villain, which would be King Piccolo, and the tournament, they kind of merge together when Piccolo Jr., who will eventually just be called Piccolo, but for the most part they call him Jr. in this, Jr. enters the 23rd World Martial Arts Tournament to face off against Goku. Goku, who, by the way, has been aging this whole time and is now freakishly tall. Well, not freakishly tall, but he's not a kid anymore. He's very much kind of grown up. He looks a lot more like he does in Dragon Ball Z. So yeah, it's very interesting to see sort of the two types of arcs blend together. And it honestly, it kind of creates my favorite, arc, in a sense, because I love the tournaments and I love Piccolo as a villain, and when you combine those two, it's really great. And as you would probably expect, the final fight in the tournament is Goku versus Jr., and it is one of the most ridiculous, brutal fights in the entire series. It's also amazing, because if you know anything about Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, you probably know of, like, you know, these crazy fights and people are screaming, you know, ah, to get their power levels up and stuff. And that, a lot of that is in here, but it's a very brutal fight. And even though it's this giant epic fight, it's still within tournament rules, which I find really interesting. I hope no one has made a drinking game out of me saying the word interesting. Maybe that's something you should do. Take a shot every time I say the word interesting. You will probably be dead by the end of the video. So don't do that. I don't condone drinking yourself to death, and even if, like, you stop before you die, don't make this into a drinking game. I don't condone that. If you drink, alright, whatever, but don't do this, don't do a drinking game like this. So yeah, I can't even say the word. I'll say it anyway, I don't care. Just don't do it. It's very interesting that it stays within tournament rules. Like, in the tournament rules, if you are knocked out, the announcer will go over and count to 10. And if you don't get up before 10, you lose. If you are knocked out of the ring, because there is it's not a ring, it's technically a square, but they call it a ring. It's basically an arena. If you're knocked out of the ring, you lose. You lost the fight. And it's interesting, especially with how much happens in this fight. You'll kind of be left wondering, like, can they still enforce the tournament rules in this? Like, especially, like, some crazy things happen. Like, there are explosions everywhere. I mean, there is barely a stage. Like, there's barely a ring at the end of this fight. But it still counts, and it's still amazing. And it's probably my favorite part of Dragon Ball, is this fight between Goku and Jr. And yeah, so we're nearing about 30 minutes on this video. I'm sorry it took this long. But I just really felt like talking this long. So overall, we're gonna kind of wrap things up here. Dragon Ball was really good. It's interesting. Alright. Okay. Thought train gone. Okay. Dragon Ball was really good. It's weird. It's not for probably the average person. It's weird. But it's a good weird, if you're willing to accept some of the weirdness in it. It's definitely good. You should probably give it a watch. It is long. There is a lot, especially if you keep going on to Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, Dragon Ball Super. There's a lot. There's a lot of Dragon Ball here. Even just for this first show, it's 150 episodes. But if you're willing to put in that time, it is a great story. It's really fun. It has great characters, and it's just good. It's great, even, I will say. It's great, and yeah, that is basically it for my thoughts on Dragon Ball. If you haven't seen it, check it out at least. I would say, because I can't speak anymore. Because the first arc is only 12 episodes, maybe just check out those 12 episodes. See if you like it. If you don't watch it. You know, everyone has their likes and dislikes. If you don't like it, don't watch it. But if you think it's just, you know, if it kind of piques your interest, definitely keep going with it. Yeah, because even if you don't like, even if you think that the first arc is just okay, but you're still kind of intrigued by it, then go through the first tournament, because the first tournament is really good. That's where the show, I think, really picks up, really finds its footing. So yeah, that is pretty much it. End cards are going to pop up right about now. You can click on those. You can follow 7th Hour Films on Twitter, at 7th Hour Films, and that is basically it. I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.